Now, on this page, we're going to talk about traits that show multiple alleles. If you notice, on the first two pages, for every trait that we discussed, there was only 2 alleles found in the population. For example, for sickle cell anemia, in the human population, we only find 2 different codes or 2 different alleles on people's chromosomes. There's the allele for normal and there's an allele for sickle cell anemia. In pea plant populations, the only 2 alleles that'll be on chromosomes are alleles for red and alleles for white. And then for eyelash length, there's 2 different alleles in the population, an allele for long and an allele for short. So in these 3 examples, there was 2 alleles for each trait or each gene. In some situations, there's more than 2 alleles for a trait. So if a trait has more than 2 alleles, then we say that it shows multiple alleles. So if there are more than 2 alleles in the population for a trait, whenever we have more than 2 alleles, we're going to have to write our letters a little bit differently. So we usually choose a letter to represent kind of the base, and then we put other letters with it. So, for example, with blood type, there's 3 different alleles in our population for ABO blood types. Some people have alleles for A, so this is a code for A blood, and how we would write that letter. Some people have a code for B, so this is a symbol we're going to use for B blood. And some people inherited a code to have O blood, and we use a little I to represent that O. Now, the reason why we take A and B and we keep them capitalized is because they are both dominant. So someone who has both an A and a B, we're going to see both of them show up. The A and B alleles are co-dominant to one another. Now, if someone has a code for A and a code for O, we know that the A will cover up the O. So O blood is recessive to A. It's also recessive to B. So if someone has a code for B and a code for O, then they're going to have B blood type. The B allele will cover up the O allele. So let's go through the different genotypes and phenotypes that we could have in our population for the ABO blood type. If an individual is homozygous for A, then you need to know to write their letters like this. They have 2 alleles, and both of them code for A blood. So their phenotype, obviously, is A blood type. If an individual is heterozygous for A blood, so they have A blood, but we say that they're heterozygous, the only alleles they could have would be an allele for A and that allele for O, and the A is going to cover up the O. For B blood type, if an individual is homozygous for B, their 2 alleles are going to code for B, so that's homozygous for B. We also have individuals with B blood, and they're heterozygous for the trait. So their combination is they have a code for B, but they also inherited a code for O blood. Now, the only way to have O blood is if you get 2 codes for it, 2 alleles, one from mom and one from dad. This is how you get your O blood type. And then the 4th blood type is called AB blood type. And you have an allele for A and you have an allele for B. Now, ultimately, we're going to be doing these word problems, and we're going to be doing Punnett squares, and some of them have to do with blood type. So if they don't give you the letters to use, then you're more than welcome to just abbreviate them using the letters of the alphabet. You just have to remember which ones are dominant to the other ones, which ones are codominant. So if you want to write homozygous for A, and you want to write 2 A's to represent homozygous for A, that's fine. You can write this for someone who is heterozygous for A. So they have a code for A and have a code for O. If I were you, I'd make the O lowercase. And by the way, I put a line over my small letters if both the capital and uncapital looks the same when you write it. So then you know that something with a line over it means it's a lowercase. We can write this for homozygous for B, that for heterozygous for B, and write 2 O's. They have 2 alleles for O blood type, and then this would be A, B. So if you want to write your letters like this when you're doing your Punnett squares, that's fine. But the real scientific way and the way that you're going to see it in most textbooks would be using this letter I as a base. Now, the last type of inheritance we're going to talk about are these traits that are found on the sex chromosomes. And what the sex chromosomes are the 23rd pair. So if we have a sex-linked trait, then that means the gene for this trait is either found on the X or the Y. A classic example is with color blindness. Color blindness is found on the Y chromosome. So there's a gene on the Y, but you will not find, sorry, there's a gene on the X, but you will not find a gene on the Y for color blindness. It's only found on the X. Now, since it's on an X chromosome, we're going to write our letters a little bit differently. So an X chromosome that has a code to see normal, we're going to write it like this. So we're going to put an X here, and then we're going to use a letter to represent they can see color, or they have normal eyesight. I'm going to use a capital C to represent that they can see color, because that is dominant to being colorblind. So for an X chromosome that has the colorblind allele on it, I'm going to put an X, and I'm going to put a lowercase c on it to represent that would be a code for color blindness. Since the gene is not on the Y, we're not going to ever write a Y with a C on it for color blindness, because the Y simply does not carry a gene for color blindness on it. Let's go through the different genotypes. If we have a female, they're homozygous dominant. Their genotype would be XX, because they're female, and they're homozygous dominant. So I'm going to give them 2 capital C's, homozygous dominant. This would be the genotype of a female. So for phenotype, we have to write female, and then normal for normal eyesight. When you have sex-linked traits, you just don't write normal and colorblind. Since it's related to sex, you have to indicate the sex as well as the trait. A female that is a carrier for color blindness, carrier is just another way to say heterozygous for a trait. So a female who's heterozygous has a code to see normal, but she also carries the code to be colorblind. So this would be female, normal eyesight, because we said that normal is dominant to color blindness. A female who is homozygous recessive would have 2 codes for color blindness. So we're going to say XX with the little c's, and then that phenotype would be female, and we're going to put colorblind. A male with normal eyesight, you would have to be able to tell me they would be an X with a capital C and a Y. So again, the phenotype would be male. You can see normal. And then a male who expresses the trait, that means that they show color blindness. So the genotype for that male would be X with a little c and a Y. So this is male, and this male would be colorblind. Now, since the gene is located on the X, a lot of students have a tendency to believe that since a female has 2 X's, females are more likely to develop these diseases or show these diseases in our population because they have 2 X's. But that's not the case. If you think of someone who's colorblind, and we pull the class, and I said, raise your hand if you know a male who's colorblind, I can usually get most students in the room to raise their hand. If I say, raise your hand if you know a female who's colorblind, I usually get no students raising their hand, or maybe just 1 student. So any trait or disease that is recessive and on the X chromosome, you need to know that more males will develop this condition than females. So with color blindness, which is on the X chromosome, about 1 in 10 males are colorblind to about 1 in 100 females. So let's talk about why. By looking at these genotypes up here, if a female inherits 1 code to be colorblind, so that would be this situation right here, is she going to be colorblind? No, because she has that other X that codes for normal eyesight to cover up the color blindness allele. If a male inherits 1 allele for color blindness, then he is going to be colorblind. So it's less likely that females are going to inherit 2 recessive alleles. So females have to get 2 recessive alleles to be colorblind, but males just have to inherit 1. So they're more likely to develop these traits or these diseases that are carried on the X chromosome compared to females. It's kind of like hitting the lottery. You know, it's easy to win the lottery once in a month, but it's a little more difficult to win it twice in a month. So with females, they have to get 2 to have the disease, and that's less likely than just getting 1 like males.